We are now at our closing session of the day, and we have the legal panel ready. Patty Tripathi, who's the moderator of the panel, will be leading the panel. And Patty has been the founder of TriPath Media, which is a company she's been running for 16 years and was the first Indian American to face the TV news while anchoring the CNN, CNN Radio, and CNN International. Patty, over to you to introduce your panel. Thank you, everybody.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I hear that an estimated 40,000 people have registered. So I welcome you. This is not CNN. We may have better ratings at this hour. Let's dive in because we have just 30 minutes and then we'll be taking Q&As. Bios, please. Andre, Navneet, please tell us about yourselves and your expertise. Andre first.
Go ahead, me first, my apologies. Yeah, so my name is Andre Chugh. I work with a law firm called Foley and Lardner. We are a US-based but global law firm, and we have a model of taking our clients from garage to global. So we assist companies, entrepreneurs on formation, scaling and funding and IPOs and their sales and anything else in between. Myself in particular, I've been in the Bay Area for over 10 years now. I'm American Brazilian, so I actually was a Brazilian lawyer for 10 years before I moved back to the US. So a lot of the work that I do is cross-border with emerging markets, Brazil and Latin America in general being one of them. But I do work with Europe. I do have a few clients that I work off and have worked before in India. So I really like the experience of talking to different mentalities when you talk to different cultures, and entrepreneurs already come with different ideas and with different backgrounds. And whenever you're doing international cross-border work, that sheds a light even more so when you have different cultures. So that's 30 seconds of me.
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you, Andre. And Navneet, please.
I'm Navneet Chugh. I run a law firm and a CPA firm, about 35 years in business. We have 600 employees in 18 offices, 10 in US, 7 in India, and 1 in London. We do corporate work, tax work, litigation, immigration, employment, M&A, and all the rich people's problems we solve. And of the top 100 Indian companies doing business in US, we've had the pleasure of working with over half of them. So I've been very, very, very involved with TIE from day one. And it's been one of the best things in my life for the last 27 years. It's been just an absolutely wonderful organization for the entrepreneurial community around the world. Thank you, Patty.
One of the best things in your life, that's saying a lot. Thank you for joining us, and thank you so much for having me moderate this important session. So let me just dive right in because we only have 30 minutes and then followed by Q&As. That's why they save the best for last. Navneet, top 3 national global trends.
So a lot going on in this world, obviously. We now, there's about 1,000 unicorns, and now we're hearing about decacorns that are worth 10 billion, and some hectocorns that are worth over $100 billion. So one of the biggest things that's happening in the world is that the size of venture deals and funding has increased a lot. Another trend that's been picking up for a while is crowdfunding. Last year, there was about $500 million in transactions on crowdfunding. The biggest interest right now is in automation and sustainable investing. And one bad trend that's happening now is that the venture funding is slowing down, and the venture capitalists are saying that, hey, hang on to your cash. cash is king. The last year, the last quarter was one of the best venture capital quarters in the country, and all of that is about to change.
Yeah, I think I'll echo that sentiment, Petty. I think also on the last point, and Navneet mentioned, yes, I think what we are seeing more and more and throughout the markets is where it used to have a lot of cash going around, increased and to some extent crazy valuations. Now you're seeing more and more on the late stage of the financings, those being more rare than as it used to be on the Q4 of last year. But for the people listening, it's not necessarily that you should be necessarily concerned to get your check. What the other part of it, I think, at least that we're seeing in our experience, is you're seeing to some extent, obviously, less entrepreneur friendly terms on the transactions and on the financings, but you're seeing more early stage money too. So VCs that by professions, they have to invest in companies, right? They are going to try to contain their risks by putting smaller checks, and that means potentially going into more early stage companies. So that is a trend that we're seeing. I think the other thing that has shown after pandemic and supply chain issues and so forth is how technology is also being used to optimize e-commerce, which is again another gigantic sort of vertical of investments and potential growth that there is. And you see things from logistics to last mile delivery, urban mobility. So all that continues to be a trend, at least in our experience.
So Patty, can I ask you, why does CNN discriminate against Indians? Because 1 out of 6 people in this world is an Indian, and you're the only Indian reporter at CNN. 16% of CNN reporters should be Indian, no?
Let's go on to you. My video is skipping over here. So in Atlanta, I am having trouble hearing you. So if you had to argue between doing business in Latin America or in India, how would you both sway some of these startups and entrepreneurs? And what are some of the challenges? And what are some of the best countries in Latin America that you would recommend? Most of your clients are setting up shop here, but if some is considering going to Latin America, what would you tell them?
Yeah, so Latin America, it's an interesting story because it has always been the next sort of, this is the next big thing, and it's been like that for years, as emerging countries typically do. But I think that the trend that we have now is the actual venture financing ecosystem is large enough, and it is already mature enough that you see U.S. investment and other types of investment going into the region. So I'll give you an example. In 2019, there was $4.3 billion invested in Latin America overall. And at the end of 2021, we had close to $20 billion. And to Navneet's point, it was the best fourth quarter of venture capital by a lot. And Latin America saw a huge piece of that. I think the interest in the region is return of capital. I think there is a lot of problems that need to be solved that I think we take for granted here in the US in terms of what people have access to. So banking is a huge issue in Latin America. The amount of fintechs that came up, I think Brazil, if I'm not mistaken, if I don't have my data right, is the country that had the most number of fintechs in the world that came up. A lot of them went under, a lot of them are still there. I think that that's the appeal for the investors to invest. And then you have basically two different ways. If you are an entrepreneur and you are in anywhere in the world and you want to do business in Latin America, learn that it's not necessarily a very easy market for you to enter through either due to regulations, competition, language barriers, and so forth. And if you are an actual Latin American entrepreneur, then most likely your investors would like to, at some point, and this is where we come in, and most of the time is to flip your structure outside of Latin America because they don't want to risk to put the money into Latin America, into the operating companies to shield them from liabilities so that they are able to take their money easily if they when they want to. and also to have their agreements that they're entering into governed by a law that they're used to, which typically tends to be common law. So you have a lot of these deals being structured in the Cayman Islands, here in the US, UK, and so forth. So that's a little bit of the history of Latin America. And I think that the biggest challenge is it is not an easy country or region for you to do business in. And to your third question about which countries, Brazil is the largest market, not only because it has the largest population in the region, it has the largest economy in the region, but it also has the most mature venture market in the region as well, because of the other two things.
And that's where you're from as well, correct?
What's that? Sorry.
And that's where you grew up, in Brazil.
That's where I grew up for my life. Yes. So I got lucky there. But you also see Colombian unicorns, you see Chilean unicorns, and Peruvian tech companies as well. And obviously, being so close, when we're talking overall Latin America, obviously the Mexican market is also another market that U.S. investors typically like to tap into.
Okay, Navneet, thank you so much. I will actually answer that question that you posed privately. But yes, there needs to be more Indian Americans on network news. There aren't any females. I agree with you. And so thank you for asking me that. So about India, how does India make it easier to do business there? And you have many offices in India. And you're one-stop shopping because you do accounting as well as law.
Right. So we run a CPA firm as well as a law firm, and a CPA firm, a CA firm, and law firm in India. India is a 1% country since liberalization in 1991. Literacy is going up by 1%, and poverty is going down by 1%, and per capita income is increasing by 1% every year. The ease of doing business is also increasing 1% a year, and the good thing is it's common law, which the genesis is both English law for US and India. So the Indian lawyers and US lawyers are able to do business together very easily because the underlying principles are the same. The court system in India is not nearly as good as US, and a lot needs to be fixed in India. But people have figured out ways around it, having arbitration in other countries and having US as a jurisdiction. The number of customers is the same in Latin America as the middle class of India, about 450 million in both regions. India has 200 million extra workers that are not properly employed. So there should be 600 million workers in India.
Several questions I wanted to get in.
Sure.
In the next 8 minutes. So what can we learn from millennials? Because the tendency to do things that that we can learn from, and what should they be learning from us? They have an app for everything.
Yeah, so I think one of the people that are doing startups, one of the things that they need to look at is that there are a lot of startups now that are helping other startups. So how we old people are used to doing business, open up a bank account, drive to the bank and sign pieces of paper. And so the millennials aren't willing to do any of that unless it's on an app. So fortunately, HR, finance, IT, sales, marketing, knowledge management, everything, there is an app geared for mostly the startup crowd. It is amazing how my two young kids, 27 and 24, don't operate the way we operate. My son had a jury duty notice, and I kept worrying that he's not going to respond and going to get arrested. And I kept telling him, hey, you take this seriously. He says, yeah, I took care of it. I uploaded it on an app and they fixed it. And I'm like, okay. So that's what's going on in this new world.
Okay. I hope everybody out there getting their questions ready. So a lot of stuff trending in the news that I ask you about, Johnny and Amber. I am not going to ask you. What I did see was that Airbnb announced that it would be allow employees to work from anywhere in the world, including 3 months anywhere in the world. There are some logistics, some payroll problems. They have to establish a home base somewhere. What are some of the things that that employers have to consider when they are 800,000 people go into their career website to see after this announcement that they could employees can work remotely, including 90 days from another part of the world. Andre.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you're a huge employer in your global company, right, you gotta understand that every single jurisdiction that you're in is not the same, and employment laws and how those things are viewed is different. I think that there's going to be, and there has been in certain parts of the world, some flexibility about employee classification, which is what the hugest risks of you. It's hiring someone that you're not paying withholding taxes that they're required to, or paying them the benefits that they're required to under law. We're here in the US very used to sort of at will employment, and it gets benefits, and the market puts a trend of, oh, this company is nice to work on because it gives X, Y, and Z benefits. But other parts of the world are not like that. Other parts of the world is actually required by law that the employee gets X, Y, and Z, which is a great thing. But on the flip side, it starts to get very expensive. So sometimes companies try to take some certain legal shortcuts, which are allowed and required and sometimes necessary to get to that employee base that they want to have. So, but you have to be extremely careful when you're expanding your company. For the people that are hearing us already at that stage, that you got to make sure that you understand what the implications are, because you can have all the flexibility that you want to give to people. And I have a story like this. I have a client that came to me and said, Andre, we're doing X, Y, and Z. We're letting people work. The person works for me and 14 other companies. And I'm saying, okay, but what are the facts? Like, what are they doing for you? And when they described it to me, that was in that jurisdiction, an employee per se. So we alerted them, obviously, and then they try to navigate it. So I think my advice would be very, very careful when you're expanding it into the areas that you're expanding in it, how you're doing it. And again, I think the challenge is you don't want to lose talent, so you want to remain competitive and be able to give people what they want to give and flexibility and so forth. But at the same time, you got to be very, very careful you're not stepping into any landmines.
Navneet, same question.
Yeah, Patty. So I think I tell all startup founders to watch out for 4 things. One is to create value in business and manage risk. The only 2 things every business needs to worry about is create value and manage risk. And second, please, no oral agreements, have everything in writing, because I see that often. And then, of course, they end up in trouble, which is good for us lawyers. Third, the thing they need to worry about the most, the trickiest, is employment law, especially in states like California. And number 4, I tell them to worry about Section 83B from a tax point of view. So again, employment law and tax, both of them, there is a secret, by the way, and the secret is one word, and the word is land. So every country, every city, every county, every district, every state says, if you're working on our land, you have to follow our laws. If you are working and generating income in our land, you need to pay us taxes. And in the United States, we have 4 partners: the federal government, the state government, the county, and the city, and all 4 of them have a handout, and they want their taxes.
All right, thank you so much. And last bit before we take Q&As, what have you learned as an entrepreneur over the years? The best advice you can give, each one of you.
Andre?
So I think the best advice is, as you're growing your company, as Navneet said, you've got to be worried about your team and building, because investors invest obviously in the idea, but they're investing at the end of the day, at the core, at the management level, and they're invested in the team. So make sure that your people are happy and they're motivated to work. On the legal front, I think for especially very early stage companies, what I can say is know when to bring the right advisors to you and have the right people next to you. The amount of times, Patty, that we see that sometimes entrepreneurs just don't care about necessarily keeping things clean on the corporate side or doing things by the book because it's not necessary. And having a good advisor to say, hey, don't step here, step there. Like Navneet, examples of the 83B can have a huge tax implication for a founder in terms of their own equity comp in the company. So knowing when to bring your people, and I'm the first one that tell my clients, say, it's not time for you to hire me yet. And sometimes I say, let's have just a conversation and we can talk later. But I think it's having the right people at your side to be able to advise you on various things, being legal, being accounting, being business, being related to the region that you're going into, being the US or otherwise. So those would be my top three.
Navneet, I expect something funny. So what's your advice?
Solve a good problem. Timing and speed are the most important things. And of course, the team. And number one thing is always capital, always be fundraising, always have a lot of money. I remember on May 2001, John Chambers was the keynote speaker at TieCon, and he said something, and I wrote it down and put it on a piece of sticky, and it's still on my desk 21 years later. And he said, in the future, 100 years, 4 things will distinguish a good company from an average company. And those 4 things are speed, brand, talent, and culture. And that's still true today.
Wow, good advice. Speed, talent, brand, and culture. All right, so now, thank you so much, gentlemen. It's been really nice to moderate. I apologize, I'm having trouble hearing you because the video has been skipping and your audio has been as well. But now we are ready. I think Shannon Clark is going to be coming in to switch us over to another room, yeah. And we'll be taking some Q&A.
So let me I just want to thank everyone, and this is for the recording. So just want to thank Navneet, Andre, and Patty for this great panel. We are going to be continuing with Q&A, and we'll leave this room open as long as we have Q&A coming in. But I do need to, in my role as the track chair, also thank my co-chairs, Ekta Dang and Kanu Gulati, and to thank all of our great track manager, Praveen, for all the work we did to put on this track today. And for those who are interested, I want to mention that there's a grand keynote about to start with Gurda Sri Sri Ravi Shankar in the main auditorium. But if you want to stay in this room, you're welcome to, and we'll take Q&A for as long as it comes in. I know we already have a few questions coming in. So with that, back to the panel.
Great, thank you, Shannon. So one question I see from Kanu Gulati, at what stage should you consider a subsidiary in India? Is it at 10 contracted people or more? So that's for you, Navneet.
10 is a good number. I think given what is going to happen in this world in the future, it will be difficult for any business or any startup to be not in India. And so my suggestion is to get going with a subsidiary in India as quickly as possible. Again, CEOs of American companies say that we go to India for talent, for back office, for outsourcing. Then when we get there, we realize what a huge market it is. And so to sell. And so my suggestion, as quickly as possible, be in India.
Okay, I'm just going to remind people that they can actually communicate with us and send us some questions. I'm waiting for some, or let's see. Anu is relaying the questions from the audience. So question, has entrepreneurship changed in recent years? And what are the enablers?
Andre?
Sorry, you kind of came across a little bit choppy. What if entrepreneurship has changed in the few years, and what are the new challenges and enablers? Was that the question?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think I mean, entrepreneurship, I think it has the same core value and idea since before. And when we see this in the Bay Area quite a lot, and you mean innovative, you mean people that are trying to break barriers and disrupt things. I think what it has changed is it has now become something more of a global scale that we didn't have before. And I think it's touching various areas of the world and is becoming a way for companies to grow and get financed. So I think before, if you talk 30 years ago or 40 years ago, entrepreneurship was there, not necessarily with this name, but I think the attention that was given it to people into the space that it is right now has changed quite a lot, and you're seeing more and more people. And I think it could very well be, Patty, for you, because of, to relate to your past question, a generational thing as well, where I think prior generations, like you get out of school and then you went to be a doctor, a CPA, a lawyer, and now people are literally just, I'm getting out of school and this is what I'm doing. I'm going to open my own company and I'm going to do this. And I think the biggest challenges now is because it's a larger market now and you have more players in the space, I think you might encounter more competition than you used before. I think that there is, to some extent, even though there is, I think, more capital available, there is some, depending on the timing that you're in, and to Navneet's point of timing and speed, right? There's more scrutiny into what you're doing. And so investors are sort of like, you got to be prepared at the meetings that you come in. And sometimes you see entrepreneurs that are not, because they think that they can snap their fingers and they get funded, which not necessarily the case every single time. So I think the enabler, I would say, is more and more and more the development of the entrepreneurship culture. So you're seeing more and more now, either companies or individuals being more prepared to create that culture for startups or for tech companies or for entrepreneurship that before you didn't see it as well. So people are concerned about their mental health of their team, and they're concerned about how give them work-life balance, which was something that I wouldn't say it was unheard of before, but it was definitely didn't have that focus. So I think that's a huge enabler that's allowing people to be able to grow more and more.
Okay, Navneet, same question.
Yeah, so you know what's going on in this world, I think with entrepreneurship is that startup used to be a Silicon Valley, an American thing, and now it's all over the world. And I think we're very hopeful and optimistic that the next generations will be able to solve all of the world's problems that we face today. Water, if you look at the biggest 5-6 problems in the world, energy and water and environment and food and poverty and income equality, I think the startups will fix all these problems. And I think not only do startups will fix these problems, startups and startup founders are becoming a worldwide community and taking on the burden of the world on their shoulders, whether they realize it or not, and becoming socially involved along the way. So that's a huge side benefit of the startup world, that all the world's problems will be fixed by this crowd.
Okay, I think I'm going to need somebody over there in California to decipher these questions, because I'm not seeing them where I am in Atlanta, and the video is choppy too until I can fix it. Shannon, do you want to ask the next question?
I'm not sure if I'm if I'm on screen or not. So if I am, great. If I'm not, we'll get that fixed. But I think this is a good point to
can
end,
I ask,
actually. So
Shannon, can I ask Andre a question?
absolutely.
So
And then I
Andre,
have one more to close this on.
okay. So Andre, how does a startup get into Latin America? What would be the first three things we need to do?
I think, I mean, if you're referring to a U.S. startup, are you asking a U.S. startup going to Latin America,
Yes.
or just an entrepreneur opening in Latin America directly?
Either an India startup or a US startup. What do we have to do?
So I think, so to operate in Latin America, most likely you're going to have to open a subsidiary there from the get-go. You can start, if you're very, very, very early stage, you can start hiring engineers and sort of mapping out what you need if you're hiring your team from there. But at the moment that you decided to step into the market, then you're going to have to open a subsidiary. I think the advantage of doing that is obviously you shield liability from the rest of your company that you have. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and if you're talking about a late stage Navneet, company in India that wants to go to Brazil, the easiest way to do is just go buy a Brazilian business at the end of the day, because that comes with not only the team, the expertise, but it's a very bureaucratic region, if you will. So getting all the licenses, whenever you jump into something that's already in motion, it's way easier than when you have to go ahead and find it by yourself. And I think the third one is know very well which problem you're trying to solve. So if you're coming in and you're trying to solve many problems at the same time, you're going to crash and burn pretty quickly. And I think that goes to every single, I think, part of the world, typically, as in the venture capital theory of it all. But try to be very precise in what you're trying to solve, because again, it could be very, very messy if you try to do it otherwise. I actually like to get that question back to you the same way. If I am a U.S. company or a company anywhere in the world, what are the three things that I need to do to get into India?
India has become quite easy, and I think the branch setup is out. So we always do a subsidiary in India. There are some silly rules, like you need to have at least 2 shareholders, and one of the directors needs to be an Indian person. So we offer that as a service to our clients, that, okay, if you don't have a second director, then one of our lawyers will become a director and become a shareholder of 0.001%. And then earlier it was fashionable to go to India through Mauritius. Finally, the government of India realized that it's losing a lot of revenue, and Mauritius or America is benefiting. The taxes are being paid to US and not to India. So that loophole is kind of gone. So direct to India. And when people ask me the question you asked me, Andre, I tell them that India is the 51st state of United States. So what you would do to enter a 51st state in the US, that's the same thing we do in India.
That is very reassuring. I cannot say the same thing about Latin America, unfortunately.
Well, I think Patty is having some video issues, so I was going to ask one last closing question, and then I think we're going to wrap up, which was just, are there some common mistakes that you see entrepreneurs making, either legal or accounting, that you would recommend they avoid? And then likewise related, what's the best way for the entrepreneurs to get in touch with each of you?
You want to take this one first?
For either one of you.
Yeah, so I think the biggest mistake entrepreneurs make is not putting things in writing. They'll agree on a deal at a cocktail napkin, and that napkin is nowhere to be found. And then there's 4 people in the first conversation, and 3 of them understand that they are going to be the owners. The 4th one sitting there thinks he or she is the owner, and then problems start. So first thing, everything in writing. Second is the 83B election that needs to be done rapidly. And third is not getting senior citizens or advisors or some gray hair management help. One of the smartest things the founders of Google did is got Eric Schmidt on board. Otherwise, I think Google wouldn't have existed. So I always tell these young people that, hey, get a business coach, get that business coach to be a part owner, get that business coach to be on the board. And then because of the tension in a startup, because there's so much work, it creates friction between the owners. So that's where the business coach comes in handy.
I'll add to
Barry, any
that.
closing thoughts?
Yeah, no, what I'll add to that is, yes, keep your records clean. It will take you more money and more time to clean it up rather than, to my earlier point about having the right advisors. That's part of what I meant. The other one that I see as a huge mistake is understand when you're signing things, what do they actually mean? A lot of entrepreneurs say, oh, I'm just going to do a convertible note or a simple agreement for future equity, a safe to get funded, and they don't know what it is. And what that a lot translates into is they're not managing their cap table that well. So they're kind of giving in more stake in the company than they should have at that point, or giving it without knowing it, or potentially having it but diluted. And I have a story a client of mine did several early stage rounds, and when we actually went to look at the documents, he thought he had 45% of his company. At the end of the day, he had 18. So and then we had to kind of renegotiate and refix it. So be very, very careful when you're giving awards, stock options, RSUs, how you're doing those, because managing your cap table is essential for the health, good keep of your company. And then to get in touch with me, I'm on LinkedIn. I already saw people connecting with me by email. My email is literally if you Google my name and Foley, that's the first thing that comes up. But if you don't want to use Google, is my first letter of my name, my last name, which I granted is not very easy to spell, at Foley.com.
Oh, once again, I want to thank Navneet, Andre, and Patty for a great panel. The grand keynote is ongoing if you want to go tune that in. Otherwise, I hope it's been a great TieCon for everyone. And thanks again for everyone's hard work in putting off a great conference, and hope this has been useful. I know I've learned a lot.
Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.